what this video was going to be about, but I knew I was going to talk a little bit about parts, and I guess my own feelings about having parts, and yeah, my cat's having a crazy moment. Sorry about that. This is her crazy hour. She has a crazy hour once a night, and tonight is now. Usually it's a bit later than now. That is her in her litter box. She's not doing anything. She's just being crazy. It's her crazy hour. Okay, so anyway, parts. Yeah. Sometimes I'm watching videos on YouTube and seeing DID systems that are really, really healthy in the way that they acknowledge their parts and seem to feel at peace with the fact that they are a system. I still feel like I'm working towards that. I'm trying really hard to feel more compassion for parts, and it's a struggle, to be honest, still for me. I still feel there are a lot of times the majority of the time, where I really struggle with the idea that there are parts, and it's something that I'm working towards in therapy. It's just like a more healthy acknowledgement of parts. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I don't know if I'm making excuses for myself, but for me, a lot of the phobia, or the way I see it, a lot of the phobia is coming from the fact that I'm a parent, that I have a child, and I keep my parts pretty locked down a lot of the time, and that is definitely coming from a fear perspective of not wanting to expose my child to something that could be disorienting for her. So if I were to let parts freely reign all the time, I get concerned at times that this might cause confusion for her in her relationship with me. I'm not judging at all any system that does this, especially if they have children. I think what works for one family is up to them, and it's just for me as a parent, personally, because I'm able to lock my parts down. Not saying that's always the best approach. Often it causes a lot of inner pain. But for me, because I do have that ability, then I do use it a lot of the time when my daughter's around. For example, at the minute, my daughter's away with my husband on holiday, and I'm working, so I can't go. And I use this time to allow parts to be more present, if that makes sense, to kind of front. That's happening for me a lot this week. It's a relief. There's been a build-up of triggers, and the fact that parts are feeling able to just be there without worrying about my child is great for me right now. It's some welcome relief. I do find like the need to switch is like the need to do it is high a lot of the time, but I do block it from happening. My therapist is trying to encourage me to give parts, especially younger parts, more airtime. But for me, it's working out the way to do that without affecting my child, basically. She is like her well-being means more to me than anything on this planet, and I just something I have to do carefully. So yeah, they're away at the minute, so there's a lot more switching going on. again because there's been a lot more triggers recently. Triggers are a major factor in switching for me. I do find if there's a trauma trigger that reminds me of the past, then immediately that's going to start activating parts that are highly correlating with the trauma, so parts that were developed to deal with the trauma. So I have a lot of parts like that. I do also have parts that form other functions. So I have two main hosts. My part, which is Eva. Eva is, and you will probably mostly find me doing videos at the minute because that's just the sort of thing that I would do. My part was created primarily for school initially. I think there was a real split between, because home life was so terrifying and absolutely not normal, and such a different environment from school. School for me was always a place where I could count on people to be predictable, the environment was safe, I was always a workaholic. So Eva very quickly became tied to school and was not at all present in the home environment. So you would see this real difference in terms of how I was at home and how I was at school. So Eva was for school. And that kind of, as I grew older, transformed into work. So Eva is for work now, primarily. Eva, I would say, is the part that is furthest removed from trauma. I don't have I have some memories, but I wouldn't exactly call them memories. They're things that came up because in relation to our trauma, we did end up in court with my stepfather, and so I have some memories of that, but yeah, I'm fairly removed from everything, and I can feel it. Even just talking about that, I can feel like parts coming in, trying to I find like just by staying in my body, like just moving around, it's something my therapist has really helped me with. It helps to prevent a switch. Yeah, I have a lot of trauma around the court process that my sister and I went through. It was very traumatic. That is not for this video at all. Yeah, so I try to keep removed from all of that, anything to do with trauma. Didn't mean to get onto that subject. And as a result, I do find it's very easy for me to accidentally get onto that subject because I'm so far removed from feelings around that I will just start blurting it out, and then my therapist has had to do a lot of work with me to help me just think about what I'm saying. Like, am I getting onto a subject that's gonna be helpful, or so that is my main challenge. I find it as a part is I'm not super connected with feelings, so it's difficult for me to often I guess connect with, oh, is this a trigger right now? Am I getting triggered? Or even notice what's going on in my body. Eva is very much up here, like it's a head part. Body is just very disconnected from Eva. So Eva is now very much work oriented, but being an artist, I work in film. As a texture artist, I would say Eva is a creative part as well. So that just makes sense why I'm present to do this video. When I'm around my child, there is inevitably limitations in terms of what I can do for her as a part, because I'm not super connected with my feelings. If it were to just be me with her, I don't think that I could give her everything she needs. I could look after her, I can clothe her, I can give her the physical things she needs. But that's why I have to co-host with Ray when she's around, who is a feelings part. Ray does hold some trauma memories, but they're very limited, and Ray is a nurturing part. As a young child, again, trying not to go too close to the trauma, but I had to look after my youngest sister a lot. I mean, I was her mother, basically. She's 10 years younger than me, and for quite a big period of my childhood, I was her mother figure, basically, because she wasn't going to get it from anywhere else. So Ray initially evolved for that. So Ray is really a nurturer, caring part, very good at that kind of stuff. Had a lot of practice growing up, and now Ray is the part that we use as a system with my child. So there will be clear switches. I mean, you probably wouldn't notice, but there is a clear switch between Eva and Ray constantly when my child is around. Yeah, when there needs to be feelings involved, which is all the time when you have a child, then I will switch out with Ray, or we'll work together. That is something that I've developed over the last few years, is that ability to kind of co-host with Ray. It wasn't there initially, it was a very clear switch. Now I find that there are times where we definitely are working together. And that is the hallmark of DID, I understand as well, because I think full-blown dissociative identity disorder, you're having multiple AMPs, so apparently normal parts. I think that's called. You've got multiple emotional parts, and then you also have multiple AMPs as well. And so there's me and Ray, but there are also a lot of other AMPs as well. I have 1, 2, 3, I don't know, maybe 4 other AMPs as well, to handle different aspects of life. And they each have their own very specific role. Obviously there's other kinds of parts as well. I don't feel at this point that I want to talk too much about obviously some of the other parts which are more trauma related. I think that is a video for the future. Obviously there's a lot of emotion attached to those parts, and I still feel like I'm working on having a better relationship with those parts. Most of my trauma parts I do not have co-consciousness with, which is like where you are aware if they're out of what's going on, what they're feeling. I do to a certain degree now. That's been quite recent, that ability. And it varies. I mean, people think of it often as being a very clear, like either you're aware of them or not, but I find co-consciousness is like a sliding scale. Like for me, you know, it goes from knowing they're out but not having any idea what's going on, what they're feeling, what's happening whilst they're out, to being more present when they're out and actually being able to feel what they're feeling, which very rarely happens. And then, yeah, I guess the ultimate goal is being able to, side by side, like I am with Ray, have complete awareness of what's happening when those parts are out. I don't think that's probably going to happen until, I don't know when that'll happen. I guess that's just a process over time. Is something that I'm working towards. I do feel that there's a lot of phobia of trauma parts, but I understand as well that that is part of having DID. I mean, it's normal to have phobia of traumatized parts because that's the whole point of the disorder. I even feel uncomfortable calling it a disorder because for me it was a survival mechanism. The whole point of it is so that you can carry on with life, and those parts contain, very parceled up, the horrors of what happened to you. It's that simple. And my parts did that very well for me. I'm protected from a lot of what happened. The emotional hit doesn't go through me, it goes through those parts. The problem is that I get affected by them in a physical way. So I might not, for one thing, I don't often realise I've been triggered because I don't get that. It's gone straight to a part. I start to recognise it when my body stops behaving as it should do. So I go into freeze response. So I almost have paralysis where I can't move. I've had episodes where I just fall on the floor. My body just gives up, and like I'm re-experiencing something, but I don't know what it is that I'm experiencing. It's quite frightening at times, especially because I can't see it coming because I'm so removed from those trauma triggers. I don't realise it. So that's one thing I'm working on in therapy, is like getting closer to recognising what's going on in my body and what it's telling me. Initially I was really frightened by all of this. I used to blame myself a lot, thinking that I was crazy, and one thing that really helped was re-engaging with my sister, who's one of my sisters, who's 2 years younger than me. She actually ran away from home when she was 16, maybe just a bit before actually. She ran away from home and ended up in care, and we became estranged. I didn't hear anything from her for many years, and then we re-engaged with each other a few years back after my daughter was born, and I found out that she had similar diagnosis as me, and she also suffers from very severe, she has seizures, dissociative seizures, amongst other really difficult symptoms. So I think that was really healing for both of us actually, because we realised, thinking that we were just both crazy in as individuals, and then reconnecting with each other, and suddenly you're finding someone who is having a very similar trauma response to you, and you're kind of like, oh well, maybe actually how I responded to what happened was perfectly valid and normal within my frame of reference. It's too much of a coincidence that we both have the symptoms that we do, the diagnosis that we do. Although I'm very impressed that my family managed to produce 2 children with DID. That's, some serious stuff they have to look at. Anyway. So hopefully that's kind of giving you a bit more information about, I guess, where I'm at with my parts, and maybe you'll get to meet some at some point. That would be interesting. Anyway, bye for now, I guess.